Welcome to Redtastic. Story 1. I, 27 male, am a single father of a 4-year-old daughter. My wife died after giving birth to our child, so I had to raise her all by myself. I was running a small auto shop, which was our only source of income to cover all our finances. It was hard to raise a daughter alone, especially a newborn, and at the same time, I had to deal with the passing of my wife. When my Korean in-laws, whom I haven't had contact with for years, knew about our situation, they tried to use it against me to get custody of my child's custody. They filed a case stating how financially unstable I was to support my child. I admit I wasn't earning big, but I was making enough to provide everything my child needed. But they were so desperate to take my child away from me, so I had to fight back and hire a lawyer to represent me in court, which put me in a lot of debt. I won the case to have my child's custody, which I had all the right to begin with. I thought they would stop there, but just a week after losing the case against me, CPS came knocking on my door because my in-laws reported me for neglecting my child. But for the second time, their attempts didn't work out. It turned out that the reason why they were so adamant about doing everything to take my child away from me was that they didn't want her to grow up in a white household. Like why they never approved of me for their daughter because I'm white. I could clearly remember how they would humiliate me before in front of everyone by calling me an addict and ignorant in their native language, which I could easily understand. Definitely after their failed attempts to have my daughter's custody, I knew my in-laws hated me even more, but I had too much responsibility as a single father to prioritize instead of minding what they were thinking about me or what they were up to next. Surprisingly, 2 years passed and we never heard anything from them since our last encounter with the CPS. I worked extra hard to grow my shop, which fortunately was generating more than enough income for our needs. I managed to pay for the debts my in-laws caused me, and I was saving up extra for my daughter's future. We were living a peaceful and comfortable life, just us two. But randomly, I received a call from my in-laws. It was my mother-in-law who informed me how her husband was dying of chronic kidney disease and they needed money for his dialysis. I straight up said no. She started crying and sort of apologizing and said if my late wife was alive, she would want me to help her dying father. To which I simply replied that she's not alive, so it doesn't matter. I think she was stunned into silence because she didn't expect such a callous reply. But I had no intention of giving them any money, so why waste time? All the money I had saved up was for my daughter's future, my late wife's child's future. That's the only duty I think she would expect of me. I wouldn't touch those savings for them. It wasn't my responsibility to fund his medication. Raising a child alone was already too much of a responsibility for me to deal with. Was I right in my decision? Update. It's been 3 months. I just heard that my father-in-law has expired. They never contacted us again after I refused to extend financial help for my father-in-law's medical bills. It was my sister-in-law who informed me of the news. I don't know what to do with this news. I'm sorry about your wife, OP. Your in-laws laid their beds. They are the ones who decided to make life harder for you and your daughter after your wife's passing. They could have decided to put their differences with you aside and help you in taking care of their granddaughter together. But instead, they did everything they could to try and take her from you simply because you're white. You decided to save up for your daughter's future and not use it for anything else. I believe you're doing the best you can for who you want to do it for. Story 2. I, 29 female, have lived in the same apartment for 5 years, as has my neighbor 27 female and her husband. In 2018, she starts showing up at my doorstep to talk and make sure I am okay. I live alone. I'm mildly annoyed but do my best to be friendly. During one of our first conversations, she says something along the lines of, I remember you had dick appointments every Tuesday. What? I had a boyfriend that I broke up with in 2016, but we certainly didn't have dick appointments. Nor do I recall Tuesdays. I don't have loud, crazy sex, but hearing your neighbors do anything is sort of just the nature of living in an apartment. I brush it off because I honestly don't know how to react. We started texting and it's been mostly fine and friendly, but if she saw me leaving late at night, she would ask if I had a dick appointment. If I had a guy over, she would text, "Oh, he's cute." Last week, she and I were texting. My recent ex is texting me things that make me worry about his mental health. So I take a screenshot and send it to her, as I'm not sure what to do. My ex is not really my biggest fan right now, but he's reaching out for help. And I want a relatively objective person's opinion about what I should do. She tells me to call him. I do. All is fine. Until a few days later, my ex says, I got a text from an anonymous message asking if I was okay. And you don't know me, but you know my friend, and you told her you weren't doing well and she didn't seem to care. I asked my neighbor if she texted him. His number shown in the screenshot as he isn't a saved contact. My neighbor said no, but then later that day it comes out that her friend read our conversation, copied my ex's number, and then used a fake number to text him. I feel like that is insane behavior. I tell my neighbor as such and that I don't want to talk to her anymore. She said she understands, but it wasn't her, and sends me screenshots from her friend where her friend says, I didn't think he'd be able to trace it back to her. My neighbor is upset with me and put a 2-page letter at my door saying, I never think about how she feels. I have hurt her feelings by ditching her one time we were going to hang out. She's not the one who texted my ex, and it's not fair that I label her untrustworthy. Her friend goes through her phone, that's nothing new, so she had no idea it was going to happen. I can't say it's insane because I don't know her friend. And I'm just mad because I want my ex back, and now my ex is furious with me. Also, she blocked me on social media. I feel like I made a mistake trusting this person with some sensitive information and for believing that when I text someone my entire conversation won't be read by a third party. I feel as though my privacy, my boundaries, everything is just shattered. Obviously, I broke my ex's trust as well, but that's a separate issue. I have not responded to this letter as I feel justified in not wanting to speak to her. Am I the a-hole for cutting her off? You're not the a-hole for cutting off your neighbor. I just don't understand why you would send her a screenshot of those messages if you don't really like her or feel comfortable with her. Your ex is probably never going to forgive you, but I would advise you to be careful next time who you discuss important issues with. As for your neighbor, I bet she wrote the message and is just trying to lie to cover up her tracks. Either way, definitely cut her off. Now for some comments. Ugh, stop telling this woman anything. Why are you discussing personal details with her? Everything about her sounds skeevy. You've had plenty of clues that she's not trustworthy. You're being the a-hole to yourself here, but gonna say not the a-hole for cutting her off. It's the right thing to do. You should have done it a long time ago. Everyone sucks here. You definitely should have at least blacked out your ex's number if you're sending the messages to strangers. But your neighbor sounds a little unhinged, so you're definitely right to cut them off. And if this neighbor ever makes you feel uncomfortable or in danger, do not hesitate to call for help. This person doesn't sound right. From the beginning, I clearly see your neighbor is crossing the line. Asking if you have dick appointments may be acceptable if you two are friends, but you're not, you're neighbors. She must have thought you guys were friends or getting close to becoming friends. That is the only reasonable explanation I can think of. I do think it's weird that you trusted your neighbor with sensitive information like this. You and I both know she's a bit off, a bit too overall friendly, so why? Nevertheless, you did ask her for her opinion, she gave it to me, then her friend completely crossed the line. You just can't do that. You can't text your friend's partner, someone you never met. I'm sorry the neighbor's friend did this, I'm sorry the neighbor is acting so childish now, not the a-hole. Story 3. We are only a relatively small department within the company, with 6 of us in total. I'm the supervisor for our department, and one of my roles is approving sick or annual leave requests for our department. Our day-to-day operations are not overly busy or stressful, and I will usually always approve a leave request assuming they have enough. However, we do have a couple of times throughout the year when it is all hands on deck. And unless there is a really important reason, we typically don't let people take leave during these times. Last week, one of my colleagues submitted a request to take 2 days annual leave to attend his friend's wedding. It was quite a surprise to see his name show up, since he doesn't really use his leave. He has only been working here just shy of 3 years, but has almost all of his leaves still untouched. He's a hard worker, young and 25, and is single and childless, so he doesn't really need to use his leave. Despite the finance team encouraging him to use it, he has previously cancelled scheduled leave to cover for other staff when we were short-handed and is easily one of our most reliable and hardworking assets. I didn't get around to checking his leave until Saturday. He has asked for 2 days off in about 6 months' time to travel to the wedding. However, the dates that he asked for fall during our busiest period. And unless it's something drastically important, we don't usually allow leave during this time. So even though I didn't want to, I had to reject his leave request. He called me on Sunday after getting the automated email back and basically blew up at me over the phone. He was extremely frustrated, and I can understand, but I have never heard him raise his voice like this before. He brought up a lot of points about other staff always taking leave while he covers for them, and how he has cancelled approved leave for the sake of others. He brought up how important to him this wedding is and how he never takes time off unless it's important. We discussed a lot of things that I won't share that directly relate to the company, but ultimately his point was that the others are always taking leave and being approved, but he never takes it and gets turned down when he does. We are having a meeting on Wednesday with him, myself, and HR to discuss it to see if there's a solution we can work out. Ultimately, it is still my decision to make, and if I think it is in the best interest of my team, I'm willing to put my foot down on the matter. We haven't spoken since the phone call, and I won't see him before our meeting next as I'm out of town. While I do believe I made the right decision and my husband agrees with me, and thinks he's in the wrong for getting angry over the phone and making a scene, I can't shake this feeling in my stomach that I'm being heartless and ultimately an a-hole. Am I the a-hole? Update. Met with my colleague this morning. I apologized for denying his request without talking to him about it first. He apologized for getting angry over the phone and said he knew he shouldn't have put in leave for that time. It was very amicable. We had our meeting with HR this morning. Again, it was very amicable. Our HR manager said that in these circumstances, they generally wouldn't allow annual leave due to the nature of our roles and how busy these days are. He reminded us that our contracts state that annual leave can be refused during times that require us to be here or if it would leave us understaffed. Taking into consideration his lack of taking leave on his flexibility, the HR manager is going to put forward a request on our department's behalf for us to bring in a temporary hire to be trained to cover for him at today's meeting. Edit. Thank you everyone who responded. You have made it very clear that I'm the a-hole in this situation. I'm not going to try and argue it or make excuses. However, I would like to address some common points being raised. Number 1. When I said drastically important, I was referring to cases like family emergencies or events that obviously are important but aren't covered by sick or compassionate leave. I didn't mean to belittle the wedding as unimportant. Number 2. I only mentioned that he doesn't have children or a partner to explain why he doesn't feel the need to take leave as often as the others. By his own admission, marital or child status has no relevance on who I approve and who I reject. Number 3. Many people mentioned or asked about bringing in more staff or managing people better, so I want to address that too. There are currently 6 of us as full-time employees. Outside of our 2 busy periods, it is no problem to shuffle people around to cover even 2 or 3 people who might be sick or are on leave. During busy periods, however, our roles are different to normal and requires each of us to be at a specific place fulfilling a specific role with a specific group of people. Unfortunately, this means that I can't shuffle people around to cover for him, because it will still leave us short. In the past, when people have been sick, we have had no choice but to cancel and try to reschedule our appointments, which isn't always possible and doesn't sit well with the higher-ups. Number 4. Bringing in new staff to cover is completely out of my control. It isn't within my role to choose to hire new people. I only get to approve who we take when it's decided we are hiring. This is due to the specialist nature of the appointments, and because we are not busy outside of these times. The meeting with HR on Wednesday is to make a case to let us bring in someone to cover that we could train during the time before his leave. Number 5. And finally, the comment about putting my foot down is not about a power move. It is purely because if I let one person take annual leave during this time, then I need to let everyone do it. I realize I worded that badly. Now for some comments. Even with all your attempts at justification, you are the a-hole. To treat someone you describe as easily one of our most reliable and hardworking assets who rarely requests time off this way is incredibly short-sighted. This is how companies lose reliable and hardworking assets. You seem like the type of manager who uses people as things and not as human beings. He has a life, you are telling him to miss a major event of his life for the company. Screw the company. If that's how they treat a hardworking, low-maintenance aka perfect employee, I hope he leaves because he's one in a million and will be way more successful with a company that values work and personal life balances. Your edit still makes you're the a-hole. You're doubling down on your position instead of showing compassion. This worker sounds amazing and you're treating him like absolute crap. If he doesn't resign eventually because of this, he will at least stop putting his neck out so much and covering for other staff. You'll have turned a stellar worker into just another mediocre or worse one who will stake by with the bare minimum. Congratulations.